let's get started here. Well, thanks everyone for joining us tonight. We have a fun program. We've been doing a lot of different programs throughout the week. This is International Dark Sky Week, and tonight we're going to have a kind of a fun program with touring the. Hopefully everybody can see my screen okay. We're going to be touring different apps that you can have that can help you find your way through the universe. And we've got Jim Small with us. First, I want to just talk briefly about what's going on with International Dark Sky Week. The International Dark Sky Association has set aside a week every year. This is the week that's actually happening, where they are having all kinds of presentations and resources available, and it's been a fun week. A lot of things been going on, and you can look at there's a website URL there, idsw@darksky.org. If you visit that, you'll find there's a lot going on. You can also, by the way, find that on the darksky.org webpage. And we have a couple more events coming up after this one this week in IDA, Missouri. We have one on Friday. We have a joint program with the Audubon Society, and we'll be talking about Bird-Friendly Fridays. And this is really about how birds migrate. And it's a very dangerous whenever we have light pollution. They tend to collide into buildings, and there are a lot of deaths related to that. And then on Saturday, there'll be one with the basically Astronomical Society of Kansas City. We'll be doing one. It's called Missouri's Vanishing Night. Both of these two upcoming events are pretty much a Facebook Live. The one in Kansas City will be an actual Zoom registration for the people that are members, but for those who are not members, we'll be doing a Facebook Live. All right, so our approach tonight is pretty straightforward. We've got about a 60-minute program, give or take some. Many of you have already been doing Zoom, what's called meeting formats, and that's a little different than what we're doing tonight. This is called a webinar format. In a meeting format, everybody it's like you get around a table and you have a big discussion. It's just a chat kind of thing. And in this case, it'll be a webinar format, and you can see and hear us, but we can't see or hear you. And so the way that it'll work is that, just one second here, as the way that it'll work here is that basically you'll be able to ask questions by going to the Q&A area or the chat area, or you can actually raise your hand, and I'll be the moderator. I'll check the questions, and Jim's going to be very busy with his iPads and his different technologies trying to do things. And if you have a question, we'll relay that question, or we can just take all the questions. We'll have a whole pool of questions that will remember all your questions, and at the end, what we'll do is we'll be able to answer those. And then if you happen to be on Facebook Live, I think we're streaming right now. I'm hoping so, at least. I don't know if I did that exactly right, but we should be on Facebook Live. And for those of you that are on Facebook Live, you're only going to be able to watch, but still, hopefully, you'll have a good time. All right, so Jim is, there's so many apps out there that it's just hard to even begin to describe. But Jim has been very experienced. In fact, he's pointed to me. He's always finding some app I don't know about. And he's got me hooked on this. In fact, it seems like I have to get a bigger iPhone or iPad all the time. But we tried to find things that, for the most part, work on both Androids as well as iPhones. And there's even some desktop stuff here that we can really talk about. Now, you can find this list, by the way, on darksky.missouri.org. If you just go to the page where you would have registered for this webinar, it'll be there. So our guest speaker tonight is fun. By the way, it's going to be a lot of interesting to see how this works, because we're dealing with a lot of technology here. We're moving on to iPads, and we're doing stuff back and forth with dual screens, and it's kind of crazy, but hopefully we'll be able to make it work out. So many of you know Jim Small, but if you don't, he's a great resource for really St. Louis and the Missouri area, and even nationally. He's a retired public school teacher. He's now teaching Introduction to Astronomy course at East Central College. He does observatory, planetarium type of thing for Pattonville schools. And he's been president of the St. Louis Astronomical Society, I think maybe before I was born. I'm not absolutely sure. I'm just kidding there, Jim. And he's also involved with the Jefferson College Observatory Project. We're putting together an observatory at Jefferson College, so that should be a lot of fun. And if that's not enough, he does photography. He's at chess, works with the Gateway Chess Club, and does blues harmonics. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm getting a lot of noise here, Jim. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to try to turn this thing over to you. And you guys, you'll just give us some patience here, because I think you should be able to take it over, Jim, I think, at this point, and get your iPad going.
Yeah, I can share screen. So I just wanted to thank Don for the invitation to do this activity, this webinar. It should be a lot of fun. There are gazillions of apps out there. There's so many planetarium programs. I'm sure you could look at a bunch of them. The one I'm most familiar with is Sky Safari, so we'll be working with that. We also have Stellarium available, so we'll take a look at that as well. Those are probably the two most popular apps, and then there's a third one called Star Walk that we'll take a look at because it's got some features that make it really simple to use. Probably the best person around for using Stellarium is Bill Breeden. He's in here as well. So if there's questions about Stellarium I can't answer, you might be able to help us out. But let's get started with some apps. So I'm going to share my screen here.
Okay, so just 1 minute, Jim. We're getting a couple questions. I think the microphone issue should be resolved now. If it's not been resolved, it's probably because we had both microphones going on one time. I'm not sure. And it looks like one person says, "I can't see you, Jim." You should be able to, if you're on an iPhone or an iPad, you should be able to. There should be a window there that should pop that up. So if I'll try to answer these as we go here, in terms of working individually with you guys, but let's get Jim going and so he can move forward. So thanks, Jim. You go ahead and move on ahead there. Thanks.
So I'm hoping everybody can see my screen from the iPad. Is that right? Can you guys, Don, can you see the Sky Safari? Okay. So this is Sky Safari. It has a ton of settings. If you look at down at the bottom, there are all kinds of aspects that you can look at there. There's a night mode. If you're using it outside, you can make it all red. That helps. There's a compass mode, and if you put it in that, you can actually just hold the iPad or your phone. By the way, they both work the same way, and point to the sky, and it should direct you in the right direction, etc. This is looking due south at about 9 o'clock right now. The settings down at the bottom, that's part of what I'm going to go through because a lot of people want to know how to operate these apps. And it's usually relatively simple to deal with. If you need to set it to a different time, but there's a circle that has a little clock in it, and you can set it up on the different time settings, and you can forward or reverse in any unit of time you want. You can click on hours, and you can make it seconds, minutes, hours, days, months, years, etc. And you can actually type it in as that, whether you want it to be 1 hour or 10 minutes, whatever aspect you want. So you can adjust the time that way. And then when you hit the time clock again, that will disappear off your screen. This particular version of Sky Safari is the Pro version. The cheapest version, I think, is $3.99. This version I got because you can actually, if you hit the little scope icon, you can control your telescope with this version. So that's one aspect that it's useful for. So obviously you can move around the sky. You can see the lines that I have. The green line in the middle is the meridian. The yellow line is the ecliptic. That's the path you're usually going to find the planets and the sun on. And then the white line is the celestial equator. And let's back it up an hour just because that'll, sorry. Now, forward. You got to be careful which button you hit. So we're backing it up an hour because in the west, and you can pinch and move forward. And there's our friend Orion. This is what the western sky looks like just after dark. So this is about 8:40 in the evening. We've got a lot of stuff in the western sky that's going to look really nice tonight. You've got Orion with Betelgeuse and Rigel, and of course M42 and the Sword. The most obvious thing will be the 3 stars in the belt. And we use Orion to find things in the sky, so that makes it very easy. If you follow the belt to the right, you'll end up here at Aldebaran and the Hyades. That's a spectacular region of the sky in binoculars. And then naked eye, you can see the Pleiades, which is my favorite star cluster. And that's also a spectacular object in binoculars. And then you can go up to Venus. And one of the things you can do with the app, you can hit the ± key or just pinch out with your hands. And if you keep zooming in, you can see what phase Venus is in. And here you can see it's not full. It's kind of a crescent type phase. And so you can zoom in as much as you want. As you zoom in, you get more and more stars. If you go the other way, then you get to Sirius. And there's lots of things that you can find using this program. Some other aspects about the program. Right now, I have the boundaries for the constellation set. You can go into settings, and then you can hit constellations, and you can turn off any of these features, modern lines, mythical figures. If you want the mythical figures, you can just click that, and it'll show you the figures as you move around the sky. There's Orion. I really kind of disagree with this drawing of Orion. I feel like if he's going to defend himself from the bull, it should be something a little better than a dead lion hanging over his wrist. But go back to settings. If you want to turn those off, you can just turn that off. You can show the boundaries. You can show the names, or you can use abbreviations if you want the names to go out of the way. You can also show asterism, which is kind of handy if you want to see, for example, the winter circle of stars. If you go to the north, of course, you'll have the dippers. Those are asterisms, the kite. And if you come back in several hours, you can find the teapot rising in the east. So if we come back a few hours from now, there's the teapot rising, about to rise in the east. So those are all features that you can use just dealing with constellations. You can also change the appearance and behavior. And so you can use any of these to deal with the screen brightness. Tilt to use the compass. You can set it up so that if you tilt the iPad, the compass will automatically come on. If you're just using it on a table or something, then that won't deal with it. Horizon and sky. You can show the sky. You can show the cardinal points. You can show the glow. You can show daylight. If you want to see where the stars are during the day without that, you can turn that off. It'll show you the sky as if daylight wasn't there. Under stars, you can set the magnitude of stars in the second line there. And if you click that, then that's kind of important, because if you make it too high, obviously it's going to be very crowded and very hard to see how many stars you have in the sky. And so set that to a limit for human vision is usually about magnitude 6.0. We don't get that in our skies. So if you want a little more realistic, set it closer to 5, and that'll be more realistic for stars in our light polluted skies. Now I'm going to go back and turn off the asterisms. Okay, so the stars, then you can set the magnitude. You can also set the names, show the names, and you can identify the name density. And so if you want names of everything, you can do that, but boy, it gets really crowded if you put all the names in there. And if you back it off a little bit, then you can have maybe the names of just the major stars. So we'll put Orion up there because a lot of people are familiar with the names of those stars. So you can set it so it just shows the major stars in Orion, et cetera, and adjust the name level however you want. You can also set up deep sky limits. And so if you want to look for deep sky objects, you can show all of them. And let me go back. Let's see. You can show names for those for deep sky, and if you put the magnitude limit in there, you can adjust how much you actually see for those. You can also show the Milky Way if you want. These are all options: framed outline, filled area, etc. So there's a lot of possibilities there. Grid and reference. You can show the celestial equator, for example. If you want to show a grid with standard equatorial coordinates, you can, and that'll put the grid on the sky for you. And that's handy for sometimes if you're looking for particular objects. You can show any kind of reference points you want. I usually turn on the poles. I turn on zenith and nadir as well, so you know the point directly overhead. That's kind of handy for a reference, etc. And if you look over here on user data on the left, you can save save these settings as a particular setup. So if you've got a setup that you like for outreach, that would be one thing. If you got something you want more specific and more information for doing observing, especially deep sky observing with your telescope, you can set it up at a different set of settings and save those so you don't have to go in and change them all the time. And so that's pretty much all the features for this. The other things, and this is one of the reasons I like Sky Safari a lot, you can zoom in. And I guess I should point out, you can click on Observe, and you can put up different scope displays. A lot of people have a telrad, so you can show telrad circles, or you can show crosshairs, etc. So you can also set up custom fields of view for whatever you want. I like showing the telrad circles. Kind of gives you an idea for size difference. If you click on any object and get the marks going around the object, you can click on selection and then get object info. And this is one of the reasons I really like Sky Safari. Sky Safari, for any star virtually that you would care to look at, it has all of this information on the left, anything you want to know about how far it is, etc. And then the description over here on the right, those descriptions are all from, for the most part, if you look at the very bottom, adapted from Stars by Jim Kaler. He's a professor emeritus of astronomy from the University of Illinois. His book on stars is sort of the definitive resource for any stars. And these descriptions, a lot of times will have images. If it's an object like a deep sky object, they'll have pictures that you can show people, etc. And it's also got other information, like here's a size comparison and so on. So that's one of the things that makes Sky Safari really valuable. It's got all this information about any star that you happen to click on. You can also find things with it. So if we go into search, right now it's tonight, it would have been a popular time to find Wolf 359 for a project from New Horizons where they're going to look at parallax using that object. Mark Jones took a picture of it last night, but you can type that in, hit search, and it pulls up the information for Wolf 359. It's the red star right in the center. And then you can click down here in the lower left. If you look in the very lower left, you can see the word center. And if you do that, it'll take that object and automatically put it on the sky where it is. And so you can zoom in on this. Wolf 359 is not very bright, but there it is, the red star in the middle. And so you can search on any object, such as brightest comets. Let's see how Atlas is doing. Right now, magnitude, there it is, theoretically. It would have been a great comet, but it's kind of falling apart. But you can find any of the brightest comets. They're updated relatively frequency. So you can look at all of these objects if you want. Tonight's best gives you a list of objects that are good to look at for the particular night in question. And so you can scroll through any one of these. Notice the comments on there, by the way. So if you need suggestions for what to look at while you're using the app, or if you're planning on doing some observing, you can. Another feature that's really good for this is you can also make your own lists. And if you click on Observe, you can click on Planner and get all of these objects and actually copy them to your own observing list, which you can click here. So you can create a new list and then import objects into that list and it gives you a place where you can actually type in information about your observations. And so to add an object, then you select it and tap selection in the toolbar, then add to observing list. So you can use that to add objects to this list.
So Jim, we had a question about the audio tour button up in the upper left of the object information panel. Do you know where that is?
I've never done that. We can try that if you want. Let's see. So selection, object info, no audio tour on that. Let me just click on Capella here. I'm sure there'll be something for Capella. Yeah, so audio tour.
Capella is the sixth brightest star in the sky and closest bright star to the celestial pole. For northern observers, Capella is observable each month except July, so closely does it hug the center of the sky. The name means goat star, and Capella, at 42 light-years, is a yellowish star with a similar surface temperature to the Sun. But at the distance of Capella, our Sun would appear no brighter than the faintest star visible at night. To explain the difference, note that our Sun is of modest size compared to giant Capella. Capella is two stars, each roughly 10 times the diameter of the Sun, circling each other at 100 million kilometers.
So it sounds like it's a really nice description of each object. So if you were doing outreach, for example, that would be a real good thing to listen to before you start pulling objects into your scope. Give you all kinds of ideas of what to talk about from that. So looks like
if you have this on a desktop, can you do this on a desktop, Sky Safari?
Yeah.
If you don't have a GPS on your desktop, I guess it'll work. It's just a matter you got to push it around. So if you don't have a GPS on your desktop, then obviously it's not going to know where you are, I guess, right?
Well, no, it'll go by current location, sure.
Right.
So you can set it up. I mean, this is by current location, but you can also select the location from any cities or wherever. You can look at it from anywhere you want. Now, it also does a lot of simulations and that kind of thing. You can actually go to a star in 3D if you want, but that gets a little complicated. We really don't have a huge amount of time to be able to do that here. Are there any other questions about Sky Safari itself?
I don't see anything coming through right now yet.
Okay. Could you guys hear the description when I was playing it?
Yeah, I could hear it fine here.
Okay, good.
And we were getting comments they could hear it. So.
Okay, it was pretty quiet on my end, so.
Yeah.
Not a problem. All right. So this is Sky Safari. I like it mainly because of the tools it has, and you can, of course, do night vision for that if you want. There's a lot of options in settings that observe, and it's a pretty powerful program. This particular version is Pro, so it may have some more features than the $3 version, but the $3 version will still be great. I don't know if I assume the inexpensive version has the description for the stars and stuff, I think.
So someone asked a question, is it called Sky Safari on the PC?
Yes. Yep. So Sky Safari, this is version 6.
Okay. And another question about, can the program auto increment over time and center on a selected object?
Yeah, so let me show you what that looks like. So let's click on Venus. And let's just make it go by day, right? And so if you want to watch Venus over a series of days, you can click it one at a time, okay? Or you can hit the button to the right of now. So the one in the middle, just to the right of now, goes one day at a time. If you hit the button to the right of that, it just keeps going. Now, the only thing I didn't do for that, let me stop this. Selection, center object. So if you center the object, let me get back to Venus again. So if you click on Venus and then selection, center object, then Venus will stay right there. And if you go by days, then you can get this. So you can see when it's going to be a morning object, see when it's going to be an evening object again. If you notice, we're already well into 2021 here. So it goes pretty quick in that situation. So if that's too fast for you, then you can use other increments. And probably the favorite one for this, let's go a few hours up. Get Jupiter above the screen. Zoom in. This is another one that's kind of fun to do for this. So you can center Jupiter. And then you can go by hours. And you can see how the moons move. Oop, that's a little too quick. Let's go by minutes. And you can watch the motion of Jupiter's moons. What the only thing you can't do, I don't think, is control how fast it goes in the various increments. I don't think there's a situation for that. But that's kind of handy kind of thing to do. You can also actually go to an object and so on. So there's lots of options for Sky Safari. There's the Milky Way. You can change the appearance of that if you want, etc. And if you have an object that's a deep sky object, when you get info on that, then it usually has an image of what the object looks like. And then you can click on the link and get a better image, etc. So, and again, lots of information about it on both sides. Okay, that's pretty much it on Sky Safari, I think, unless we have more questions. And again, this can be used to control your telescope. So you can do it wirelessly. You can do it by a direct connection, by just hooking up something to your phone or your iPad. And you can just click on scope and actually use this to control where the objects are that you go to.
So Jim, we had someone think that maybe this is called Starry Night on the PC. Do you
No,
think
well, Starry Night is owned by the same company. Starry Night bought Sky Safari. They are not the same program, however. As far as I know, let me check this to make sure.
Yeah, I think it used to be called Southern Stars.
Well, Starry Night used to be a separate program, and then the company that sells Starry Night bought the company Sky Safari. Yeah, the company's name is Simulation Curriculum. Products.
Yeah, it used to be called Southern Stars is what it was called before.
Oh, that was a long time ago, yeah.
Well, not that long ago, because I know the guy that owned it.
Okay.
He just started working for Astronomy Without Borders.
8 or 10 years, let's put it that way. But yeah, so you can actually go to Sky Safari Astronomy.com, and that's got all the places where you can purchase. And they do a sale relatively frequently, so you can get it sometimes, inexpensively compared to most.
We're getting a couple pushbacks. I think they're saying that Sky Safari is not available on Windows, only for Apple products and Android. And it says, why do we have to sign up for Live Sky or Sky Live? I don't think you actually have to sign up.
No, you don't have to sign up. Oh, so it's not available? I know you can get it for Android, so okay.
Okay, we have a question here about which settings put the orbit lines on.
Orbit lines? Are you talking about the ecliptic?
I think so. Yeah, looks like you've got different.
If you go into settings, that's grid and reference. here, and there's buttons for celestial equator, ecliptic path, meridian line, zenith and nadir, the poles, etc. So here's what it looks like without all that.
Okay.
You can also put the galactic equator on and stuff, but I usually don't do that. So yeah, maybe it is live sky.
Well, I know that I've used this on the iPad and it works really great. It's probably one of the better choices as far as professional or amateur astronomers. And I know it's on the Android too, but
Live sky is something different. I'm not sure what that is. I'm not familiar with it anyway. So okay. Yeah, so maybe it is, but it is available on Android phones. I know that. So, something that is available on all platforms is Stellarium, and we do have a resident expert here for that. And that's Bill Breeden. He's been doing some terrific tours with that. The difference is the controls down here at the bottom. Sometimes in the desktop version especially, they're a hidden, the default is a hidden thing off to the side usually, and you have to move your mouse over there to get them to show up. But I think you can set it up so that they're turned on all the time. If you look down at the bottom, you can turn on or turn off names for constellations. You can have mythical figures for constellations. That's next to it. You can turn on constellations in general if you don't want those. You can turn on deep sky objects, so you can find those. You can turn on satellites and so on, so you can see those if you want. And it's generally the same kind of thing as Sky Safari, different controls, different objects. If you click on an object, then you'll get some information about it. So if you click on Antares, for example, you get a panel up there, and you can expand the panel to get more information about it if you want, and then get rid of the panel if you like for the object that you have selected. So the information in here isn't nearly as much as what it is in Sky Safari. If somebody has the inexpensive version, I'd be curious as to know how much of that data is actually in Sky Safari Lite, for example. But same kind of thing for Stellarium. This, I believe it's a free app for both the desktop and the phone, but they have paid versions as well that have more features. And then all I'm doing is pinching to zoom in, and it has plenty of stars for the average observer. And so you shouldn't have any trouble at all using it the same way you would use Sky Safari. They're both powerful programs. They're both good planetarium programs, etc. So I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail for that. If you want to see it in operation, just attend any of Bill Breeden's virtual programs, which I don't know if he has one coming up Saturday or not, but we can check on that later. But if you watch this last calendar, you can see those. And it's got the same kinds of features that you have in Sky Safari, etc. It'll do the location automatically. You can put grid lines on. You can put alpha azimuth lines on, or the standard equatorial grid lines. And then, of course, the more you zoom in, the more detailed they get.
I think the Stellarium might be actually a couple dollars on the iPad. I believe it's free for the desktop download. It's an open source.
Right.
Yeah, but I think it's a couple dollars, $2.99, I believe, for the basic map, and then there's a plus map that's $10.
Apps, you can't just give away apps for free usually,
Oh, okay.
for the most part. I think Star Walk is free though, right? Is that still free?
I think it's about $2.99, but there could be times when it is free. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So this is another app called Star Walk that's real popular. It used to be when you open this app, it would show up with just this screen. That would be the opening screen, which I think is terrific. I used to use the app just for that because it has the rise and set times and approximate altitude for all the objects that you can see naked eye. And so it was really good app for that. And this is a terrific reference point that you can use. If somebody says, hey, when's Jupiter rising? Well, 2 a.m. today, et cetera. Saturn, 2:18, a few minutes after. Mars, 3 o'clock, et cetera. So you can get an idea of when things are going to be visible and so on. So I really like Star Walk for that feature. It's a different kind of program. I'm not going to go into details on how it operates. It's another planetarium program. And I'm going to pull in one more that wasn't on the list. Let me get to my planetarium programs. Another one is called Luminos, and this is supposed to be a really nice program as well. It's got some really spectacular derivations. I like some of these figures. I think it's a little more artistic, etc. In some of the aspects, and it's got some pretty powerful settings as well. I haven't messed with Luminos much, but it's a real popular program, and it's got some. I would say it's as advanced as Sky Safari almost as far as controls and so on. I'm just more used to using Sky Safari. So that's pretty much it for the 4 planetarium type apps that I'll look at. But there are some other things that we can look at that are also very cool.
Can you take a couple of questions real quick, Jim?
Sure, absolutely.
One of the questions was about live sky. Remember that on Sky Safari? Why do you have to have? What is the point of that live sky? What is it used for? Do you know?
I really don't. It says manage and share your Sky Safari data using any device, any browser, any OS. And so that's, I'm assuming that's any observation data that you've put in or anything that you've set up in Sky Safari.
Oh, I think that's right. I do remember looking at it before.
Sort of a Sky Safari setting or assistant sort of. And there's web apps and so on and so forth that, and it also says yes Windows. And so it might be that that's a program that can be used with Sky Safari for Windows.
So somebody just responded that it's in Starry Night also.
Okay. Yeah, Starry Night is probably the leader as far as education planetarium programs. A lot of colleges and textbooks will include it they used to include an actual CD for it as part of the benefits from the textbook. And at Merrimack, for example, it was loaded onto all the computers there so that we could use Starry Night for demonstrations and planetarium program and so on. It's got a lot of nice eclipse simulations and all that kind of stuff. So Starry Night, if you're into education or into helping others understand how things work, you can find lots and lots of cool demos in Starry Night. So that's one of the biggest differences for that. Sky Safari is more designed for the user. Starry Night is more designed for showing people the sky and so on. It's better at that. It's also great for the user as well. So I would say since the company owns both, that any of the benefits for Sky Safari Pro are going to show up in Starry Night as well. It can also control telescopes and so on. So let me show you one of my other favorite apps, and this is the original Star Walk. Well, let me show you a couple of observation ones first. One is Jupiter's moons. I use this app a lot. Jupiter's moons is handy because it shows you the position of the moons at any time. So if you pull in Jupiter in, people always want to know, hey, which moon is that? And so this is the easy way to get that. If you look over here on the left, it shows you all the events that are coming up with Jupiter. And that's things like Great Red Spot transiting, Io transit, Io shadow transit, all that stuff. And you can set it up so that it looks just like your scope. So you can flip it vertically, you can flip it horizontally, or you can learn more about other objects. If you tap in the middle of the screen, it enlarges it. And so you can see what the moons look like. I like the buttons here. You can advance it by 10-minute, if you don't tap the middle of the screen. You can advance it by 10-minute intervals, so you can see how fast those moons actually move. Or you can do that, and you can see kind of what Galileo saw over time, where he made observations of the moons, at different positions and so on. And you can see the relative positions. And then, of course, you can just click now to get back to the thing. And you can do that by years, minutes, seconds. The 10-minute version works really well. So that's really handy for knowing what Jupiter's moons are. You can put it in night mode, and it doesn't interfere with your night vision. And the advantage for it, of course, is once you see the configuration of the moons, it's pretty easy to identify what's what. Hey, the one that's by itself on one side is Io, and then from inside out, it's Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto around the side. So that gives you an idea of how to use that. It's just a handy app. Anytime I'm doing outreach, that app is almost, if Jupiter's up, that app is always in play, so that I know what's going on for that. And that's my Sky and Telescope, by the way. You can also do the same thing for Saturn's moons as soon as I find it. Oh, did I close that one by mistake? There it is. Oh, sorry. Accidentally pushed this. One of my favorite apps, just because it's a really cool clock. That one's called Observatory. So the same kind of thing for Saturn's moons. You can pinch it in and out. You can shrink it back to see more of the moons. Saturn's got a lot that you can actually see through a scope. And so you can zoom in on those. And again, you can move it by 10-minute intervals or forward it if you want to see how those are working as well. And you can flip it horizontally or vertically. Etc. And down here, you can learn about various aspects of Saturn. So it's a nice educational tool to explore if you got students or people that want to learn about the planet, etc. And again, it also has a night mode as well. So same kind of feature. Those two apps are very handy. So if you want to know where Titan is or some of the other moons around Saturn, where you can see, that gives you a nice aspect of how they're orientated around the planet.
So Jim, have you used the Sun, Moon, and Planets app?
I have not.
Yeah, I think I've used that before. It's pretty basic, but it's not bad.
Same kind of thing?
Yeah, it's.
Then there's sort of my another one for outreach, Moon Atlas. Let me go to a different day here. So you can go full screen on this if you want. You can also flip the view on this to be the way it is in your telescope, upside down or backwards, either one. And I think I thought I could see what it. Wait a minute. I don't go ahead very often, so. So under settings, you can also do night light and that, by the way. So that's currently where we're at right now. So you can also zoom in on these to show craters. It also shows landing sites and objects. There's some of those. If you double click on any one of the names, it gives you information about the diameter of the crater. Usually if I'm showing one of the bigger craters like Tycho or whatever, you know, some of those are on the order of 60 miles across. So it's like, hey, that's from O'Fallon, Missouri to Fallon, Illinois with the arch in the middle. You know, just give you an idea for scale. But almost all the objects on the moon are named for astronomers or philosophers. And so you can get that information as to who they're named after for the various craters. And then you can zoom in, kind of show people what you're looking at on the moon, and you know, give them a reference. And they really like working with that. All right, I got to figure out how to advance the date. You can also.
We had a question here about a product called Photo Pills, Pills. This person uses it to find the Milky Way, where it's going to appear in the sky at night for photographs. Photo Pills. Have you ever heard of that?
Nope, we haven't used that one either. That sounds cool.
That's what's funny about this. There's so many of these things out there. It's like they're constantly coming up.
So that's Moon Atlas. That's another handy one to have, you know, especially if you're looking at the moon and so on. And then so sort of my favorite app for, and I'm going to close this and restart it. Restart that one too. So solar system, I got so many stuff I have to start them like that. So when you first fire this up, Solar Walk, goes zooming in, goes all the way through the solar system, comes in on Earth. And the very coolest thing is, you know, we talk about the ecliptic. You know, what is the ecliptic? Well, that's the path of the sun, you know, as the Earth orbits the sun. But a lot of people have trouble figuring out why that is like it is. Well, this app allows you to three-dimensionally look at things without any problem at all. And it's probably the best visualization for looking at the solar system. Hey, it's a big plane, and you can talk about why that is. There's the asteroid belt, et cetera. If you zoom out a little farther, you get the major planets, including the Kuiper belt, and so on. And it does show Pluto, Neptune. You can see how far they are out. And you can see the stars in the background. And one of the things I notice on this is you can start zooming out from the solar system. Oh, and I guess I should show you a couple more features here. You can view this from any planet. So if you want to know what the view looks like from Mars, you can just tap on Mars. It'll zoom into that, and then it'll show you what Mars, there's one of the moons for Mars. It gives you a 2-scale difference between Mars and other objects. And you can zoom over and find Earth, you know, along the plane. When you get there, there's the sun. You can see relatively how small the sun is when you're actually on Mars and so on. And take a look at what the Earth looks like from Mars. And so it's kind of a cool way to do that. We'll go back to Earth here again and zoom out. Now, when you use these to look at the solar system, you realize, you know, how small it is compared to other stars. You notice there's no stars close. If I start zooming out from the sun, and I'm very slowly pinching here, it takes a long time before those background stars finally start to move, and we're zooming out past some other stars. And when we get to that point, then it kind of melds into a different image of what things look like. But you can zoom far enough out so you can explain why the Milky Way is like it is, because suddenly you realize the Milky Way is a plane, and it's a very thin object. So when you see the Milky Way, you can get a better handle on, hey, here's why there's so many stars in that direction. You're looking through the disk. Whereas if you look north, you know, there aren't nearly as many stars out of that. So if you go north from the Earth, you're not going to see near as many. If you look in this direction, then you can see the planet. And when I first bought this program, it was a spiral galaxy. Well, I got some more information with mapping, of course, and now we know it's a barred spiral galaxy. But you can see the relative position of the sun, and I just think it's one of the better apps to visualize the galaxy itself and kind of explain why there's the Milky Way.
So,
Now,
Jim, this is Solar Walk. Sorry, Solar Walk.
This is not Solar Walk 2.
Okay,
And
it's cool.
the reason I like this one allows you to get this view of the galaxy. Solar Walk 2 does not. It's more carefully mapped. Let me show you the difference. So if you go to Solar Walk 2, and notice all the stars. Terrific set of map stars here. And I'm going to try to stop this so it's not moving. It keeps moving forward. It's automatically set to move forward in time. So when you zoom out on this view, then you'll notice one of the big differences is, let me go ahead and go back to the Earth again. So it's got a lot of named satellites. Those are all located. There's Gaia back there. There's Tess. You know, if you start zooming out from the Earth, there's our moon. And it's really got some really nice visualizations for a lot. There's Chandra, Integral, Newton, Gaia. You know, just tons and tons of objects that are listed in here in addition to the stars and so on. And so if you start pulling away from that, you can get more satellites. And there's Soho, for example. Osiris X. And my favorites coming up here, if I can find it. Let me start it over again. Shows up a little better when you first fire it up. We'll go to New Horizons in a minute, but one of the ones I wanted to show. And let me. There it is. Everybody see Tesla over here under Phoenix? So it actually shows Tesla out here past Mars's orbit. If you click on that, that's pretty entertaining if you ask me. Kids get a real kick out of that. What? There's a car in space? Yes. And there's a driver even. So if you want a free Tesla, all you got to do is go out to get it. Lots of other satellites. There's Dawn. Jupiter, that was in the asteroid belt. There's New Horizons, which, by the way, at 10 o'clock tonight is going to be taking a picture of Wolf 359 for reference. And then if you keep zooming out, there's Voyager 2, and there's Voyager 1. And so you can see how far out they are. And if you keep zooming out on this one, instead of showing you the Milky Way like the other one did, this basically has lots and lots of stars. So it's not quite the same visualization. You can tell that it's a plane, but it's not as obvious, but more accurate star mapping, I think. And so you don't really get a good handle on the shape. I don't think you can zoom out any farther. Yeah, that's the maximum you can zoom out. So that's kind of why I like the Solar Walk, the original, for that reason. But this is really beautiful map stars and gives you a great three-dimensional look for the various objects.
So Jim, I've got a question here about, do you
Okay.
have a preferred app are artificial satellite times and magnitudes?
Oh, there is one. You can turn that on in Sky Safari, and it will give you information about any satellite, I think. But there are apps just for that. I don't know if I have any of the current ones.
Yeah, I've got several. I can't say that I've tested the accuracy of them. There's actually some pretty good ones.
Trying to think.
There's actually something called Satellite Safari.
Oh, well, that would be yeah. Here we go. So there's Satellite Safari.
I believe that's by the same group as Sky Safari, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm assuming. Renamed Orbit Track. Twice as many satellites, new graphics, virtual reality, all kinds of stuff.
We got some feedback that Heavens Above is great for satellites too.
Sure, but is that an app? That would be my question.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
GoSat Watch is one I used for a long time. It's got lots of them, and I think it's so here are satellite passes coming up. It's downloading.
Yeah, we're gonna have to probably wrap up pretty quick here, Jim. We're getting up on the hour. It's hard to believe it's going by so fast. Wow.
Yeah, no kidding, right? So GoSat Watch is another, but I'm sure there's other apps. There's one called iFlares. I haven't explored satellite apps for a while because Sky Safari is real good about notifying. I think they're in settings, observe. Let's see.
Why don't you show them that Emerald app? That's a really cool. Before we wrap up here, that's a crazy app, but it's once you get used to it, it's really kind of something else.
It is clock app for sure. So it's got the relative position of the planets, in addition to tons of other information. So if you have an iPad that you don't want to use for anything besides a clock, there you go. You can just set it up and let that run. Yeah, that's a pretty cool clock app.
It kind of blows your mind almost how much has got on there when you start looking at it. It's like everything's in a little box. You just have to figure out how it works.
You can tell where all the planets are and why some planets are in the morning and some in the evening, depending on it shows their relationship in orbits, et cetera. So, and I haven't messed with Eclipse Simulator for a while.
Yeah, most of those are getting refreshed right now because of we're still a little ways from 2024. So,
right.
All right, we're gonna have to start wrapping up here. Anybody have any questions here? You guys, we've been trying to keep up, and it's been a little bit choppy here. I guess maybe I didn't have my screen being shared. Let me just kind of flip over real quick, and I'm going to bring it back to my screen, if that's okay, Jim.
That's fine.
Yeah, okay. Just 1 second here.
Oh, I've also got it set up so if we want to look at the interactive sky map on Sky Telescope, I got that set up on the desktop.
All right. So I think hopefully I'm getting this up here this time where it's going to show up. Get it to work. Are you guys able to see that now?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay,
it's got my little.
All right. So I wanted to back up to this page right here. I was kind of keeping a list of the apps that we've gone through, and I have updated this list on the website. If you go where you would have registered, this list will be there. So it'll kind of give you an idea. The one thing we did not cover was Stellarium, the open source software, and I know Bill Breeden, I believe, is on the group here, and he's been doing a really good job of using it. It's a desktop type of thing or laptop type of thing, and it's really pretty powerful. It's not something that I really know that much about, but I know it's got a lot to it, and I believe it's a free download. The rest of these are some choices, and I believe that most of them can be used on both Android and also on iPad. So I think with that, I guess we're going to start wrapping up here. Are there any questions before we end up here? Let me see if I can get back to my questions here. I can see what's going on. This thing drives me crazy sometimes.
Let's see. John, it will show the pole star from Mars if you want to look at that. That was from a long time ago. But yeah, you could do that in Sky Safari. and actually go to Mars and then find Polaris from there.
All right. Wow. Well, the one thing that I know that I've been doing this for a little bit, I do a lot of outreach, and there's so many of these out here. It's like people are always showing me some new app that's really very cool. And I really appreciate, Jim, you spending the time with us. I know that people ask some questions. We don't always know the answers to all the questions because we tend to go with one particular platform. But definitely there's a lot of apps out there, and the technology is improving so much. So I'd like to thank Jim, and I'd like to thank everybody for joining us. We've had a pretty good turnout tonight, and I really appreciate the time. And take a look at our website. We do have a few more events coming up. One is on Friday, the Bird Friday. It's with the Audubon Society, and then one on Saturday with the Astronomical Society of Kansas City. That'll be, both of those are Facebook Live. And thanks once again to everybody for coming, and to you, Jim, for doing a great job. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks to Don for setting all this up. Sure appreciate it.